strawberry vanilla pudding oatmeal waffle. And James is going to talk about philosophy, maybe?
Yeah, The Present Age by Sorehead Kierkegaard, otherwise known as Søren Kierkegaard.
Okay.
Hey, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to zoom in on the title and whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like over here, up here is a quote.
Plane Mayday.
What was that?
Plane Mayday, that's what I'm going to talk about.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Oh, there's a quote on the cover, that's what that is.
Yeah, it's done in anarchist kind of style. It looks like a ransom note or something like that. Oh. There is no more action or decision in our day than there is perilous delight in swimming in shallow waters. That was 1846. 2 years later, the various revolutions in Europe.
So I commonly make oatmeal waffles for James. That's what I usually make. But if you are given pudding powder...
Oh, you put some pudding on there,
I did. If you're given pudding powder, you can put it right in the mix to give it a bit of different flavor. Or if you're given pudding from the library in the little cups, then, because that's what they're giving out lately, then you can put it on the waffle too. And that's good too. Or both, whatever you prefer. But I was going to say that all I do is grind up the oats in the food processor until it's flour. And that's what I use, and it doesn't take long to do that with oats. And yeah, and then I just use it as I would other flour. So depending on, sometimes like this, I was given a bag of oats from the Salvation Army. So I got, this is all free. Library pudding, whatever. Anyway, I guess I should review this because I said I would. It's bad. It's, even though it's only the only thing here, it's the bottom of the stack. It's so bad.
Now it doesn't look like a Hallmark thing.
And it's not the fault of the actors or anything, but honestly, I couldn't tell a lot of the time, okay, who's the bad guys and whatever. There's a lot of action. Sure, the plane goes down, whatever, and I'm left wondering, okay, well, why is there all this killing? You know, and why are they having to escape, and what's going on? I really couldn't figure it out. I mean, mind you, I was writing poetry while I was watching it, but action adventure movies shouldn't be that hard to follow. I mean, it's just a lot of fighting and stuff, right? But anyway,
like,
stupid.
Could Arnold Schwarzenegger follow the plot line?
Yeah.
No, just his fan. You know, if he can, then it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
It looks as though it's politically incorrect. Look at sidekick here. Eh?
Well, I couldn't understand that either, because...
Is he a real sidekick, not just on the cover?
I'm not even going to give it that away, because I'm like... One thing, okay, I'm going to give some stuff away, because it's so stupid you won't even care. There's bad guys shooting at the plane while he's trying to drive the plane to go on the runway. And the whole time you're thinking, okay, well, people can't have guns in planes because it would, like, get rid of the cabin pressure if the gun went off. Yet there's people shooting holes all through this plane. What's going on, right? How does this make sense? So I'm watching that, and then there's this one guy who's presumably a good guy, right? And he's shooting some of the bad guys from the ground while the plane is trying to take off. And I'm like, okay, so what's going to happen to that guy now that he's trying to... Whatever. You know, it was so stupid. So stupid, who cares? So go on about philosophy. How's your waffle? Probably not nearly as good now that you've had the gingerbread ones.
This is gingerbread on the bottom, though.
No.
It's just a
You're
different color.
Gingerbread.
Okay. Anyway, no, it's not nearly
it
as good as the gingerbread,
I
even with
certainly-
the pudding on it.
I know.
It's pretty good, though. Yeah.
Well, you'll get used to it again, and you'll
All
be
right,
like,
I
oh
like it.
yeah, fruit's so awesome. But because that's all my waffles. They're not. The waffles themselves are not fancy. They're really, they're sugar-free, very sugar-free. No matter what I put in them, they're still sugar-free. And so there's, I don't use sugar substitutes or anything like that, so they're not sweet. And one thing, oat flour does taste a little sweeter than just regular. So, I don't know. It works okay for me. When I put the fruit on it and stuff, I don't notice. But then I wouldn't eat that stuff, so when I'm eating the waffles, I wouldn't know any better. Honestly, your tastes kind of change. When you're not eating sugar, you do, like refined sugar, you don't. Other things taste sweeter all of a sudden than they would have when you were eating sugar.
This is true. Particularly fruit.
Particularly fruit. Like you can have the best black grapes in the world. If you have it with a little bit of sugar, it doesn't even taste good anymore. It's like, oh, where did my black grape flavor go? All you taste is sweet.
Yeah. What do I want to talk about? Anyway, we got a couple of philosophy things here. So let's talk philosophy. That's the chorus, beginning of a chorus line, or one of the song lyrics I wrote maybe about 40 years ago. Let's talk philosophy. And then the way the chorus line ends with apologies to Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. Bob's in love. And yeah, there was a real Bob that was written about. Let's talk philosophy. But I don't know whether this stuff really should qualify as philosophy. So we'll talk about Josiah Royce, and he's one of the big guys, theoretically, in American philosophy.
Oh, I gotta go deal with that other waffle. I forgot I'm still cooking. Go ahead.
So what do they say about this? Oh yeah. At a point when American philosophical thought had reached, it's a little bit hard to swallow, had reached a degree of extraordinary brilliance in the work of Royce, Josiah Royce. I always thought he was an English philosopher, kind of course, the biblical name Josiah should have given it away. Royce kind of sounds English. Of course, you can get lots of people, not as many as used to, in the United States of English extraction. I believe there are more people in the United States of German extraction, for example, than there is of English extraction. So Royce, William James, and Peirce, spelled like Pierce, like Hawkeye Pierce, okay. The American president called Pierce. I think that's the way you pronounce it. But this, I think his name is Charles Sanders Peirce, spelled Pierce. All of them were later to influence Santayana. What was his first name? George Santayana? Something like that. And Dewey, John Dewey. So he's mentioned amongst all these heavy hitters, right? Santayana, Dewey, William James, and Peirce. Emerson is not mentioned here. Of course, maybe they think of Emerson more as a literary figure than a philosophical figure. So Josiah Royce was the son of California pioneers who crossed the continent in 1848, graduate of the University of California in Berkeley. And this guy's not what you think of as coming out of Berkeley nowadays or in the 60s. And one of the first students at Johns Hopkins University. Hello there, all you folks in Baltimore, Maryland. While at Berkeley, he taught literature and philosophy and was finally brought to Harvard. Hey, all you folks in Harvard. I know at least one person who went down there. Hopefully they're doing well. Who went down there recently. A few are graduates. Including the guy who taught me beginning Hebrew here. And the guy who taught me follow-up Hebrew here. And the guy who taught me some archaeology way back in 2003. Anyway, he was brought to Harvard by William James, apparently. His creative years were spent in Harvard, where he engaged with James in philosophical controversies, and they must be pretty controversial. so, which were to influence the thought of both an entire generation of philosophers and followed. In addition to the spirit of modern philosophy, best known writings were World and the Individual, Problem of Christianity, and the Philosophy of
Baby
Loyalty.
angel.
So, yeah, Pauline's not talking to a bird, she's talking to
Angel.
her little Chihuahua, 3.5 pounds, when she's properly hydrated and, more importantly, gets a proper amount of nutrition in her. She's in trouble with her dentition, missing quite a few teeth, maybe a bit of her jaw as well. Just getting old, getting on.
She's looking a little hang-jawed.
We really can't take responsibility for that either. I think she had fairly good dentition, and then she went AWOL. That was her choice, and she was gone for.
You don't know if it was her choice. She could have been taken out of the yard.
She might have been. But
I thought a hawk got her.
okay, when she went missing in Camrose.
Yeah, but she went missing here.
Yeah, I know.
And she never went missing here.
Okay. When she went missing in Camrose.
That was when we were on holiday.
Okay, but that was her choice, right?
Yes, that was.
Okay. Now, so yeah, this guy, he's writing about the spirit of modern philosophy. And what he's making a pun on spirit. So this guy's a philosopher, but unlike a lot of philosophers, and maybe almost all of them, he has a bit of a sense of humor. Immanuel Kant, who wrote this, The Present Age, way back in 1846, and that's when it's published, if I remember correctly. I was around. No, he had something of a sense of humor, but a whole lot more bitter than Josiah Royce. Anyway, Josiah Royce is dealing with folks that he generally approves of here in this book. So it's actually not all history. It's about 2/3 history, and then he gives his interpretation of the history. I think it's leading up to his idea of what spirit should be. He seems to be really enthused about idealism, stuff like that. And so he's basically dealing in modern philosophy with a particular branch of it. So it's the folks who believe in spirit, or believe that their spirits are still around. So he's dealing with the rediscovery of the inner mind, I presume something like spirit, and from Spinoza to Kant, Immanuel Kant. Spinoza, they've got two different ways of interpreting his name. One is Benedict, but I think his real name was Baruch. What do both those mean? Baruch, I think, is how it's mispronounced. Benedict means good, benedict, spoken. It doesn't mean well spoken. It means blessed, blessed. And Baruch, as I recall, is cognate with the Arabic. Baruch is Hebrew. Arabic Baraka,
Baby
or
angel.
Barack, as in Barack Obama, blessed. So when the
Going back in?
Latin-derived word Benedict is given as his first name, it's really just a translation from his
Come on, baby.
original name. His
Oh, there's
original
a
last
girl.
name was actually Espinoza. So I suspect that means spiny or something like that. But I could be wrong. And why the Spanish name when Spinoza is who wrote most of the stuff in Latin, or at least this important stuff, did write some stuff in Dutch. His family ended up in Holland. How that happened? Well, when Ferdinand and Isabella kind of started Spanish colonization in the New World, starting with Columbus, but there were many who followed, conquistadors. They decolonized Spain. So they exiled Muslims, even Muslim converts to Christianity. And, like I'm no respecter of persons. I don't care what their color is. When Algeria got rid of I think a lot of it is voluntary, 800,000 or so. I've heard 1 million, but we'll go with 800,000. That's the lowest we have. 800,000 French folks. When would that be? Maybe 1962, something like that, 63, when they successfully de-imperialized Algeria, got rid of the French overlords. That's probably considered decolonization. The French had been there in Algeria since maybe 1830, 130 years. The Muslims of various stripes, Berbers, Arabs, starting with Arabs, have been in Spain for 781 years. It's more than 5 times as long as the French had been in Algeria. And I think it was, so that's starting 711 AD. And they didn't set up 7-Elevens in Spain. They set up a system where it was understood a leader of the faithful, as it were, should be out conducting razzias. What's that? It's actually a word taken from Arabic. And it raids. But those raids involve vandalism, plundering, rape, and enslavement. And the ideal was for the Arabic, later on the Muslim leaders, to do that every year. They were doing, shall we say, well or ill when they did that every other year, but that was the idea. So, like when the Spanish got rid of the Muslims, that was some serious de-imperialization, serious decolonization, serious de-settlement, because those folks, those Muslim folks, were settler colonists, and they were imperialists as well. You only have to look at some of the names of the rivers. Guadalquivir. That's Guad is like from Wadi. That's Arabic. And then Guad al. That's the Arabic particle. It's a something that you put in front of nouns. See how that is? They were renaming rivers, Arabic names, in Spain. How enlightened was it? Well, like when you look at the way back when, about 500, 400 BC, the enlightened part of Italy was called Magna Graecia, 300 BC, and it was actually Greek colonies in Syria, in Sicily, the southern part of Italy. It's not the enlightened part now. Greece used to be an enlightened area, and then it was colonized, settler colonized, more colonized, and definitely imperialized by Ottoman Turks. It's never been the same. Southern part of Spain, all but the initial push of the Arab conquerors went all the way almost to the Pyrenees, and the Spaniards were able to hold off around Barcelona. What's the enlightened part of Spain, the north? Eastern part, around Barcelona. Anywhere where Muslims have conquered, in the long run, it's just left a legacy of violence, corruption, and ignorance. And, southeastern Europe. There was at least one Roman emperor who came from the former Yugoslavia. It was part of the Roman Empire. And you look at southeastern Europe. And what the Ottomans did to it, what they were doing was they were mixing and matching different ethnicities. They'd play divide and conquer and subdivide and conquer. They would take a small group of people, let's say Croatians, move them into a group, let's say, of majority Serbians, so Catholics, into Eastern Orthodox, mixing and matching, moving, shaking, and that sort of stuff. And I don't know if that area of the world will ever recover from that horrible imperialization by the Ottoman Turks. Horrible, shameful, absolutely shameful. The fall apart. You'll get people saying, "Oh, what caused World War One is the various colonial powers fighting over Africa." It was Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russians fighting over the remains of the Ottoman Empire in Europe, where they had no business being. Get that straight? Right. Okay, so we go going from Spinoza. So his ancestors, the Spaniards, when they decolonized, they made the mistake of not just getting rid of the imperialists, they got rid of the Jews. Anywhere where the Jews have been, the Jews don't get blessed, but the society they're in gets blessed. There are exceptions to the rule in terms of people like Meyer Lansky and stuff like that, a member of the mafia. Bugsy Siegel, another member of the mafia. But overall, it's overwhelming a blessing to have Jews in your society. Same can't be said for Muslims, unfortunately. An example is just one example, but I've already given you overall overview of what happened in Europe with Muslim occupation. Italy, bad legacy. Spain, bad legacy in the southern part of Spain, almost all of it really, and southern part of Italy, all of Greece, southeastern Europe. So you got Spinoza. Yeah, his family, they were ethnically cleansed by, and I call it ethnically cleansed. The Jews were not settler, colonialist. They were settlers, but not colonialists, and definitely not imperialists in Spain. But they were ethnically cleansed. I call it ethnically cleansed. They were ethnically cleansed at the same time that the Muslims were exiled from Spain, and that was a mistake. Not getting rid of the Muslims, but getting rid of the Jews. Anyway, many of them went to Holland, and Holland, is about the only country in the world that isn't anti-Semitic, systemically anti-Semitic, or at the very least historically anti-Semitic. About the only one, even now. So now the sad thing is they've made the mistake of letting in, as it were, willy-nilly, without checking up what they believe in, a bunch of Muslims. 8-10% of the population is Muslim. This is not recent anymore. You got a politician who was kind of the equivalent of our conservatives, maybe a mild Republican in the United States. I'm not talking to Trump about Trump type of Republican. And this guy was sympathetic with the Jews. And what he was saying is, we can't protect you anymore.
In Holland?
In Holland. The most tolerant country in the world, the only country in the world with long-term sympathy for the Jews, who had the Germans stomp in there and wipe out 75% of the Dutch population, or the Dutch Jewish population. And he's saying, because of Muslim anti-Semitism, active, things like the equivalent of Kristallnacht.
Can you call it Muslim anti-Semitism?
Yes, you can, because Mohammed was, he called Jews who didn't convert, what is it? Not apes and pigs, or apes and dogs. It's two of the three, apes, pigs, and dogs. He says it twice, so you know. And he says the descendants of apes and pigs, or apes and dogs.
Yeah, I know. What I'm saying is Semite. Muslim people would be Semites too, right?
Yeah, it's a bad
So you
designation.
can't say it.
Well, you can, because what it means is it's come to mean something different from what it means. We use all sorts of words that have become different. So, for example, reek. Shakespeare uses that when he's describing his mistress.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Reek used to be just at the very least
Scent, yeah.
scent. It's
Yeah.
probably neutral, or maybe even slightly positive. Words change, and so anti-Semite means different from something that like
Middle Eastern.
against Semite.
Okay.
So a better designation would be a Judeo-phobe or something like that, but phobe is not a good designation.
I don't think phobe is. Yeah, like I've always the people deciding to term homophobia or whatever. It seems ridiculous because it's not phobia, it's hatred, homo hatred.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, phobia means fear.
Yeah,
In
and a
Greek.
lot of people, it's not driven by fear; it's hatred.
Exactly right. They really don't fear
Yeah.
homosexuals. They love pounding out on them.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I've been reading G. Gordon Liddy's autobiography, or rereading parts of it, because I read a substantial part of it way back when. And he's talking about being in jail and being transported. And he's the only white in the vehicle, bus it would be. And there's one guy who was gay, and the gay guy is set upon by all, except for G. Gordon Liddy, set upon by, we won't say all of the folks in the bus, but they're stealing his wallet, and they're stealing this, and they're stealing that. And the poor guy has to, like nothing was done about that. Now, these are the folks, that are represented by, the types like George Floyd, a lumpen proletariat. And we're supposed to be heavily sympathetic. It's a health problem. Yeah, they're pounding out on gays in prison.
The way that language, the way that the aggressive propagandists have decided to mess with language, then you could say that homophobics have a mental problem or whatever, right? Phobia.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous.
So, like I'm still finding out I've retitled it. It's called Will. And I put Triumph of the Will to Power. So the Will to Power is unpublished stuff by Nietzsche that was published maybe in the 60s or something like that. Or at least an English translation. And Triumph of the Will was done by Leni Riefenstahl. And it's a Nazi propaganda film. How much time?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So we'll talk about G. Gordon Liddy too. We'll get into this philosophy and all that sort of stuff. So stay tuned.